This is just amazing. I'm really happy to be here, but I'm going to start this out with 3 pretty easy questions, and I kind of took these from Sam's direction. Who is Len? Where did he come from? And why is he here talking to me? So we're going to start off with the simples. Let's start out with who I am. My name, as I said, is Len No. It's pronounced no, opposite of yes. And if you ask my parents, I've been named appropriately because I've heard Len, no, 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 my whole life. So it really worked out for me. I'm a technical evangelist, white hat, and I'm a biohacker for CyberArk software. I spent the better part of my youth and my early adulthood as an active criminal. I was a black hat. I've been in IT professionally now for going on 30 years. Don't let the beard fool you. This is all gray. I have 5 daughters, 3 grandsons, and 2 granddaughters. So I am Gandalf the White. As I said, I was a black hat, and when I started having grandkids, it was basically the time to either grow up or go to jail. And I really didn't want my grandkids, getting to meet their papa, behind bulletproof glass. I mean, it's just not a really good look. So, I'm very active on social media. Look me up on LinkedIn. Check out my GitHub, my YouTube channels if you want. I put up security-related stuff all the time. I am also one of the thought leaders, and I didn't give myself that name. I personally don't even like that term. But in the biohacking and transhuman space, we're going to get into that a little bit more as we go on. But a little bit, so I've told you who I am. So where did I come from? Honestly, I came from Detroit, Michigan. So yes, I'm a Yankee. I'm not one of you guys. But and I even had a gentleman over there earlier tonight tell me that that you guys here are genetically engineered to disavow the kilt. But I appreciate the fact that you're being cool with me. I am an international cybersecurity speaker. I've spoken in 41 different countries, and in my youth, I was in heavy metal bands. I do flesh hook suspensions. I just like doing really, really crazy things. I have spoken at pretty much every major security event around the world at one point or another in my career, from Black Hat to Sector, InfoSec, Security Weekly. I've been around, and I've also had some of my research published in Forbes magazine, along with other business periodicals in over 19 countries and totaling over 150 articles. So I've been doing this stuff for a while. So when we look at the state of the world today, we see complete dependence at every stage of life on technology. As examples from the individual's perspective, we have integrated so much of our daily lives into the smartphones that even to do simple things, we now have the additional requirement of technology. Excuse me, my laptop's acting a little stupid here. Apparently, I didn't sacrifice enough to the demo gods today. So as I was saying, tech was supposed to be something that made our lives easier. But as we can see, it's made them infinitely more complicated. For anyone familiar with Star Trek, or not familiar with Star Trek, let me introduce you to my personal favorite character, the Borg. In this series, the Borg are a race of cyborg humanoids that will assimilate other organisms into their collective hives. Once assimilated, there's no individuality anymore, and the hive acts as a single consciousness to carry out the will of the queen. Very similar to the hierarchy in a beehive. As every new addition is added, the Borg would always say the phrase resistance is futile. Basically to solidify the point that there's no stopping technology. The one ever-present similarity to these particular organisms was the always constant addition of some type of biomechanical, biomedical implant, add-ons. This could be anything from mechanical arm to bionic eyes. Regardless of what the upgrade was, this species would not be able to exist without that underlying technology layer. We as humans are no different. With the exception of people walking around with mechanical limbs and cybernetic hardware, we're just as dependent on technology, just in other ways. So let me tell you right here and right now, we're already assimilated, and I'm going to show you the proof. We've incorporated so much of our lives and existence, as well as all of the foundations of our society, into technology. Let's take a look at some of the ways our lives and existence are now dependent on the systems that we've created for us, both individually as well as from a corporate or enterprise or governmental perspective. Infrastructure. We have everything from the power grid, sanitation, wastewater treatments, security cameras, traffic lights, bridge controls, airports, air traffic controllers, trains, subways. Basically, essentially every bit of our collective infrastructures have been either connected directly, or in those rare air gap situations, the controllers themselves may not be connected, but the underlying subsystems that are controlling them are. Medical. We've seen during the pandemic where ransomware attacks against hospitals and medical centers were a direct link to at least one death and who knows how many other potential complications. Think about it. In most modern hospitals, everything from the QR or the barcode on the wristband all the way up to the drug distribution systems are all backed in some technology stack. Supply chains. We've seen the reliance on these over the course of the pandemic, and we're all still suffering some type of issue as a result of it. We have IoT, manufacturing. The manufacturing issues, those we can link directly back to the supply chain issues because they don't have the materials to make their products. Remote workers. The pandemic has forced many organizations to move to a remote workforce. This has pushed new technologies into many organizations that may not be currently prepared for them. Financial. We have everything from national governments to international transactions, and now they're all electronic. The days of pen and paper ledgers have been gone for multiple decades now. Remember the movie Fight Club? If you think about the premise of that movie, it was to remove all of the financial records so that everyone could actually start at the exact same level again. So this concept has been around for a very, very long time. Mobile devices. We have pretty much tied our complete identities to these pocket-sized devices. Hang on a minute. We use them for essentially everything. We do personal banking, social media. We even business-related functions on our mobile devices. Additionally, how many services are now only accessible through an app? This is the trend that we're moving into. We even have our emergency services, and even our politics and voting has all been moved into, some type of technology stack dependence. Let's take a look at the hard numbers for just a minute. These, when I was researching this, actually scared the hell out of me. According to a Penn State study, 77% of people said that society as a whole relies way too much on technology to be able to succeed long term. And I've even got more facts out there to prove that statistic. Technology, of course, has many innumerable benefits, but this dependency on phones and computers has impacted humans negatively. First and foremost, it has led our users to be completely engrossed in their devices. In fact, there's actually a new term, and it was actually coined here in the UK. Have you guys ever heard of the term nomophobia? This is an actual thing. It's short for no mobile phone phobia. According to Trend Hunter, 66% of the population out there today suffers from nomophobia. It was actually coined during a 2008 study by the UK Post Office, who commissioned YouGov to actually evaluate anxieties experienced by mobile phone users. The study found that nearly 53% of mobile phone users in Britain tend to be anxious when they lose their mobile phone, run out of battery or credit, or they have no network coverage. The study sampling almost 2,200 people found that about 58% of men and 47% of women had this phobia. And an additional 9% feel stressed when their mobile phones are off. 55% of those surveys cited keeping in touch with their friends or family as the main reason why the anxiety happens. The study compared the stress levels induced by the average case of nomophobia to be on par with wedding day jitters or a visit to the dentist. And we've done this to ourselves. Technology is actually even now recognized as an actual addiction. If you wonder if you might be too individually dependent, I got a couple of questions for you. Nothing can be done without the internet. If you lose your internet access, you're done for the day. You lose track of time when you're online. You feel anxious without a connection. You had a hard time disconnecting and focusing on the present. You find that you're not living in the moment, and often maybe you'll record your memories as opposed to actually experiencing them. You don't go out enough, and most of your socialization takes place online. You feel like something's missing when you don't have your phone. The list of questions is a lot longer than that. These are just the ones that I decided to pull. Most people, myself included, you're probably going to answer yes to at least a couple of these. But if you actually answered yes to a lot of them, this may be something that you may want to go and investigate on your own. So let's take a look at the actual numbers of internet users, period. According to Statistica, the global digital population on the World Wide Web as of April 2022 was over 5 billion individual users. Compare that to the total world population at the exact same time, which was only 7.9 billion. That with the numbers of nomophobia, you can see how the technology is actually leading into a negative direction for the human as a whole. So we're going to close it out with these last two statistics. According to the 2021 Microsoft Digital Defense Report, 21% of all the attacks out there were actually from nation-state actors, were actually against consumers. We all talk about nation-state actors going after governments and things, but 21% go after consumers. It's the other 79 that go after enterprises. So what happens when things start overlapping? We've seen how our society based our services around technology, and these can be compromised as well as leveraged for nefarious purposes. What happens when we start blurring the line between humanity and machine, and they start to get thin or even get removed completely? Everyone knows about things like pacemakers, and maybe you've had an interaction with like a STEM pain management system. At a minimum, I guarantee that pretty much everybody here has probably seen a hearing aid in their life. These are just a few of the multitude of human upgrade or integrations that we now have available. As technology and human augmentation evolve, we need to start looking now at how to get ahead of the attacks that we know that will already be there. Anyone who's been in the security field for any amount of time will be able to see that the vectors may change, but the attacks today are still the exact same attacks that they've always been. It's somebody looking for credentials, information, persistence, exfiltration, or a ransom. How the attacks play out will change as the technology changes, but at the core, the attacks are all still the same. So I'm really going to start messing with your heads now, and I want to take this conversation in a bit of a different direction. I want to ask you guys a very simple, yet very, very complicated question. What makes us human? Is it a physical form? Sentient consciousness? DNA? Is it a soul? Is it nothing more than a social construct? I mean, if we really stop and think about it, what makes us human? Anything that I give you as an answer by today's state of technology it can be put into question. We're living in times where there have been multiple claims of sentient computers. We have people with artificial intelligence-enabled limbs as prosthetics. And we have things like CRISPR, where we can actually modify base code DNA. And anyone who gets one of those CRISPR injections, their offspring will maintain those same genetic alterations down their genetic lines. So again, what makes us human? And at what point do we stop being human and become something else? What would be the conditions that would move an individual out of the human category and into something new? And to be honest, I question if we're not already there. If we look at the example of the Borg that I used earlier, it's a species that has based their entire existence around technology. Without it, they don't exist, period. Additionally, Borg society has no individualism, no unique identity, and all members of the hive will share that same single consciousness. In some human cases, it's pretty apparent to see that we have to have technology. Look at pacemakers and other medical devices that without them, the individuals that need them would perish. But look at the way we interact with our world, how almost every action you take in your day is linked to some type of technology. We have smart devices that make us coffee, virtual assistants that give us our daily schedule. And we have cars with computers and more sensors in them than I can even count. And that's just got us into our morning commute to work. Ordering goods and commodities and are moving away from brick and mortar stores and moving to more online mega sites. We get our information and news from the same devices that we do our banking and we make phone calls with. I can already hear it now. Everybody here is still an individual. I know. Humanity we all don't share a single consciousness, and that just doesn't happen. I know. Anybody here ever heard the term group mentality or mob mentality? There are multiple examples of single-threaded behavior in the form of boycotts, cancellations, character assassinations, rhetoric, even stock market manipulation, all based on a social perception. Mob mentality is something that's existed as far back as the history books go. And I believe it's easier now because actually everybody here can be 7 meters tall and bulletproof anonymously behind a keyboard. So we're all still individual now to a point. Maintaining that individualism and identity has become even more difficult as we move down and we blend into this technologically colored background. I'm going to show over the next couple of slides how securing and maintaining our individual identities is going to become even more of a top priority as we move forward. The new medical and technical advances that are going on, these are all things that are available today. So I told you guys that I would get into a little bit more about me. So if you don't know much about me, I'm one of a new and growing movement. I am part of the transhuman biohacker or grinder. I know, I didn't name it. I mean, I prefer to be called a wet work if you want to know the truth. I am a technologically upgraded human version of the standard human being. Now, let me be clear before I start to go down this rabbit hole that I'm not saying that augmented humans are better. We're just different. I don't see much difference between myself and really realistically anybody else. Some people can play a piano. Some people can play a violin. The only difference is I didn't have to do training to get the same abilities. But there are people out there in the audience today that I guarantee have skills that I don't have. So these are actually an older X-ray. In this one, you can see 4 different implants. Currently, I have 8, and I'm continuing to add more. So just a quick high-level overview of what I currently have. I have both high-frequency and low-frequency RFID and NFC. I have a credit card. I have a biosensing magnet, and I'm currently in the process of actually implanting a Raspberry Pi Zero W that's loaded with Kali in my leg that gets its power from an indirect power source through wireless charging. So this is real. Okay, come on. You know, it's been working so good. So, you know, when I look, one of the things that I'd like to bring out here is it time to redefine what a human is. I mean, we're relabeling everything else, so why not? You know, when I look at the stigmas and the hostilities around implants, in my opinion, it seems to come down to one thing and one thing only. Is this medically necessary or not? You know, I've never heard of anyone with type 1 diabetes who was using an insulin pump get harassed or looked at like they're somebody scary. You know, I've never seen anyone afraid for their safety if they came into contact with somebody with a pacemaker. I have never seen or heard of any religious group going after an amputee that's using some type of a smart prosthetic. It just doesn't happen. If the technology is medically necessary and prolongs the duration of life, it's all acceptable. But on the opposite side of that coin, the choice to just enhance your own human capabilities is met with fear, paranoia, aggression, and even sometimes violence. I have had people, you know, personally, I have experienced every single one of those things I just said. Paranoia, fear, aggression, and violence. I've had people turn off their electronic devices when I walk into the room. I've been told that people are afraid of me, just me, even when they don't even have any type of electronic device on them. You know, they're afraid of me as an individual. I'm not the boogeyman, and I'm not a robot. Like I said, I'm just different. The truth is that I can actually just interface with NFC and RFID. That's all. I can't just walk up to a device, instantly gain access. I can't walk up to any laptop and break encryption. This is the real world. This is not Hollywood. My point is that all science fiction, everything is all science fiction until it becomes science fact. You know, remember that at one time, lobotomies were considered the latest and greatest in medical advancements. You know, so what we're seeing today and what we see is just the peak of scientific and medical breakthrough is going to look the same as a lobotomy does 100 years from today. So everything on this list that I'm about to show you is completely up to date and verifiable. You know, so some of the new technologies that you might be getting accustomed with very quickly, we have wearable antennas. These are actually added to the skin, and the skin itself is used to actually enhance the receiving capability of the transmitter. New implantable microchips are coming out all the time, and with the advancements in graphene batteries, internal power may be here a lot sooner than we think. Brain-computer interfaces. Everybody's heard of Tesla's Neuralink. Anybody here ever heard of another company called Synchron? Synchron is actually Tesla's biggest competitor, and they're already in human trials. We have ocular implants for the blind. Anyone here ever heard of a gentleman by the name of Neil Harbison? If you haven't, check him out. He was actually he's actually considered to be the world's very first cyborg. He was blind. He has a big antenna that was surgically implanted in his brain, and the guy is an actual artist. We have optical probes now to actually assist with organ grafts. You know, there are spinal implants that are returning motility to paralyzed people. A UCLA doctor implanted a spinal stimulator that is showing early promise in returning hand strength to a California man that severed his spinal cord during a motorcycle accident. You know, in addition to the actual stimulator, the doctors implant a small battery pack that's just about the size of the palm of your hand in the lower back, connected to a controller, and that's how the doctors will actually be able to interface with it. You know, nanotechnology. This could be an entire speech all on its own. The concepts of what these little robots can do, this has the ability to look into everything from assistance with healing, muscle enhancements, age limiters. Who knows? It's crazy. What about 3D printed organs? Right now there are so many people on donor registries that we're actually able to use T cells and stem cells, and we can print viable organs. Scientists actually were able to grow neurons in a lab that have actually been taught to play the game Pong. And I know from a 1,000-foot view that may not seem all that, breathtaking, but these did not start inside of a person. They grew these in a bowl, and they're learning. Where's that going to take us another 50, 60 years from now? New medical breakthroughs have actually allowed human skin cells to be grown over robotic appendages. And the skin will even heal from cuts as if it was connected to a normal human body. In 2021, Cortical Labs actually grew neurons that were incorporated into a new type of microprocessor. The resulting hybrid chip works because both brains and neurons and semiconductors all work on the same principle of electricity. The speed of the chip is exponentially faster than standard circuit types, and these may be the types of chips that will be the key to allow breaking that qubit limit that we've seen around quantum computing. How about DNA as a storage medium? 1 gram of DNA fluid can actually hold over 7 petabytes of data with a data retention of over 100 years, provided that you keep them in the correct climate. This brings us to the point in the talk where we get to talk about ethics for a minute. The question, can we, but should we? There are so many different paths that we can take when we get into this point in the conversation. I'm only going to pick a couple of 3. If you'd like, I'm going to be around for the next day. Come talk to me. We're still dealing with the transhumanism in its infancy. There's not a lot of long-term data for implants or people like me that want to be human guinea pigs to see how much electronics that we can shove in our bodies. My personal fear, as these types of advancements continue to move forward, they're only going to be available to people that can afford them. These are the types of things that I see potentially leading to new stigmas and new divisions within the populations. You're going to have modded and non-modded. There's always going to be that division of opinions when dealing with what is acceptable to do with one's own body. It's my hope that we can keep up conversations and at least try and find some place that we can meet mutually in the center to try and just find some type of cohabitation. So, what does our future look like? I guess that really all depends on you, if you're an optimist or a pessimist. The future no doubt will hold incredible breakthroughs in science, medicine, and technology. But just as the initial PC revolution changed the face of society, this future needs to be set with the best practices that we can actually learn from our past. With these bionic enhancements, we're now seeing an expansion of the attack surfaces to potentially include people as the new attack vector. We've seen how ransomware can devastate companies and consumer devices. What if we extrapolate that same threat to an individual itself? What if the ransomware was targeting pacemakers or the spinal controllers? Now we're dealing in a true ransom situation. Every single one of these things that I've talked about, the brain-computer interfaces, the spinal implants, these are full integrated systems that have firmware, and more than likely, they're going to need to be updated from time to time in the future. I've personally shown how individuals with implants, such as mine, can become the attack vector, with multiple different attack methods based on my own personal technologies. If we look at some of the newer advancements I've already just discussed, What about the ability for someone to walk out of a building with a copy of an entire data center saved in just a few grams of DNA fluid? This isn't the days of old where, I'd need a big hard drive, or if you looked at your transmission and receiving on your internet access, you're not going to see a bunch of data being exfilled. Then we can look at the 1,000-foot view of the bionic enhanced individuals. If somebody had the ability to have a bionic eye that could zoom, save images, this could be a brand new form of espionage that we haven't even come up with a name for yet. Just a couple of quick trends. These are predictions that are, by 2025, there will be 75 billion, with a B, connected devices on the internet. And if that's not scary enough, by 2027, the estimation is that almost 85 to 90% of all commerce will be done through online services. It's 2022. That's 5 years. The future's already here. So I did want to take one moment to point out one very important point. There is currently no way to detect augmented humans. It just doesn't work. Security professionals need multiple spectrum analyzers. Every one of the commercial-grade implants that are available on the market today get their power from the receiver. They do not have internal power. So in order to detect me, you would actually have to energize my chips. And when we start looking at the fact that having multiple spectrum analyzers at every entry point, to the last speaker, she was right on the money. How do you get into a building? Put a sign on the door. It's not going to stop. I do have one pretty interesting lead on the detection of this stuff, though. And I wanted to bring this to you guys, and you're the first group that I've actually mentioned this to. Everybody here familiar with drug-sniffing canines? They use them for... You guys got them over here, too? Yeah. You guys familiar with have you heard that they now have technology sniffing dogs? Yes. So for those of you that may not be aware of this, they are now training dogs to hit on a very specific compound called triphenylphosphine. This is a chemical that is actually used in circuit board manufacturing, hard drive creation, and thumb drives. Unlike drug dogs, where they're going to be using the dog to actually try and make the arrest, these particular canines are used post-arrest in the evidence discovery phase. They're used a lot with pedophiles, human trafficking, anywhere where people would have data on a hard drive. After they get arrested or whatnot, search warrant comes out, they'll run these dogs around the house to try and find hidden hard drives and things that they can then try and use. Well, I live in Austin, Texas, and Dallas just got one of these dogs. So I actually reached out to the Dallas Police Department, and after having to go back and forth 5 or 6 times to try and explain what a transhuman was, they got on board. So we're actually in the process of trying to set up a time for me to go to the Dallas Police Department, and we're going to actually test Remy, the technology sniffing dog, against my 8 different current microchip implants. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get that done by the time I got here to do this today. But like I said, follow me on LinkedIn. This story will definitely continue, and I would love to see where this ends, because I think this is going to be a point where either life imitates art or art imitates life. I mean, if you think back to the Terminator movies, what was always wherever the humans were? The dogs were always outside because they could detect the machines. So, as I said, resistance is futile. We're already there. Ultimately, we are already part of the hive. I mean, look at our dependence on our mobile devices alone. We're already here, and we're actually trying to go further. We're a society addicted to technology and just waiting for the next fix. Resistance is futile not because we're going to be taken over by some other race of cyborg humans. We're we're going to give ourselves willingly to the technology. We will willingly submit to the technology that we have chosen to be our masters. If we don't take the time to start looking at what's coming, we definitely will not be ready when it gets here. The lines are blurred, but they're still here for the moment. As the technology continues to evolve, the dependencies on that technology will also continue to evolve proportionately. So I'm going to close out this talk the same way that I started it. Who? It's not just me anymore. Now it's all of you too. Where? Everywhere. Everywhere you look. Look beyond what you see and see all of the different technology stacks that are sitting behind it and how you're just another piece in the cog. And when? Now. I showed you a lot of really crazy futuristic stuff up here, but the problem is it's not future. There's going to be another talk tomorrow by the KSEC guys, and we're going to show you a little bit more about transhumanism and implants. But this is the world that we're living in now, and this is the world that we're giving to our children. So I will close with this statement. As I said before, we need to protect our individual identities as well as our ability to remain independent in your thoughts and your actions. Our individual identities will continue to be the ultimate prize, especially as we move forward. And this is the time where we are living, where science fiction is becoming science fact. So I like to throw my information up one last time just in case, because I know usually when people, at least myself, when I go listen to somebody talk, and when they first start talking, I'm like, I don't know if this guy's going to be any good or not. So that's me. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you, B-Sides. I've really appreciated the opportunity to come and talk to y'all. And if you like me, I'm going to be up here again tomorrow with the KSEC guys.
I suspect there's questions. Is there anyone brave enough to ask? And again with it, set the edge, you're going to have questions.
Hi, Len. That was very good, thank you. So, the implants, you're doing them because of an upside. Do they create problems for you in day-to-day life?
To be honest, I've had my first actual microchip problem happen. And I'm 8 of them in, so I think somebody that's good with statistics can throw out a number there. But I just recently had the Walletmore credit card put in the front of my hand here. I had a BioGlass encapsulated VivoKey, which is a cryptobionic chip. It decided to migrate, so it started up here and is currently sitting right about there. And the problem is now I have 2 NFC chips that are sitting right next to each other, and I'm getting double reads. So that's the only real complication I've ever gotten. I haven't had any type of health issues personally. I do know some people that were earlier on in the biohacking journey, before we started actually getting places like Dangerous Things and KSEC, where we actually had commercial grade implants. Back in the days when to bioencapsulate something, you basically took whatever you wanted, you slapped together some 2-part epoxy, you slathered it all over the thing, and you hope to hell that it actually sealed. So, I have seen some things around that. I've definitely seen some issues with some of the Firefly implants, but those are actually using active radioactive material. So, yes, I believe in shoving technology in my body, but I also don't expect myself to be stupid about it. So, the one thing that I will say when it comes to the biohacking, if this is something that you're interested in doing, I do have a respect for where it all started from, the guys in their basements that are, shoving chips in their body just to see what they could do. But be smart. You get a trained professional to install it and buy commercial grade stuff that actually comes from a place where you can actually go back to if something goes wrong. One point to that last statement, Walletmore. The one thing that I found really funny about the Walletmore is anybody who signed up for this particular implant, they refer to us as ambassadors. Because guinea pig just doesn't look good on a website. But understand that nothing that you're going to do in the biohacking space is going to be approved by any type of medical governing body. I speak to the United States because I don't know what y'all's agencies are called, but nothing I'm doing is approved by what we would call our Food and Drug Administration. So, understand that, this is the infancy. Things are going to change, but one of the things that I said in the first talk I gave was, how do you prepare for attacks that you don't know exist? So part of this talk was just to kind of throw out there, this is the kind of stuff that we're looking at. And all of this stuff currently exists. So how do you protect against it? Especially if you don't even know. I mean, realistically, if 7 petabytes of data in 1 gram, I mean, I could walk out with your entire data center in the bottom of a fast food cup.
Len, you're terrifying. In the best way. Have we got more questions? Everyone's terrified.
What in the back?
Oh, wait. More? Hang on. I'm going to go right at the back. One sec. To the back,
and then I got a second question. I got a repeater.
Mr. Cooper.
Yeah. So I'm curious, particularly when you said I'm going to put a Pi, what was it, Nano?
Pi 0W.
0W. I would imagine that an airport scanner thing goes off on that.
Everybody wants the airport questions. All right. I'm going to actually demonstrate. Len, how do you walk through an airport? Okay, everybody ready? Just like that, left foot in front of the right. Here's where things get fun. Because of the fact that these are actually implanted inside my body, I'm going to talk about the U.S. I know that there is a parallel law here in Britain. Nobody's allowed to ask me about my personal medical. So for starters, even if I did trigger, allow me to digress. We have 2 types of access through an airport. You have a magnetometer and you have a full body x-ray. The magnetometer, all of my implants combined do not have enough metallic weight in order to actually trigger a magnetometer. Additionally, the x-ray machines at the airports are set to be so general as to not trigger on your necklaces, charms, bracelets, and any other thing that you may forget on you. I have been through, obviously international because I'm here, but I have been through multiple international airports, a ton of domestics. I have never even been detected. Now, when I get the Pi in me, that one I'm still waiting to see, because if you think about it, most of that is actually made out of silicon. You have your headers, which I'm going to be desoldering. You have the trace on the board, but that's really the only metallic on it. And I'm just going to reiterate the fact that if they did notice some kind of weird bulge in my hand, they're not allowed to ask, because if they do, it goes against the medical laws. So I've been playing in a gray area twice.
Okay. The follow-up.
The follow-up.
So you mentioned, techno haves and have-nots with this, those that can afford it and what have you.
That's my fear as we go into the future, yeah.
And also a division. You're from the US, you've got a great deal of freedom. There's already schisms over there along various different lines.
Very much so.
Looking at this from a cultural perspective, you've got parts of the world where even tattoos are frowned upon.
Very much so.
So there's a potential global haves and have-nots issue around this, not even just locally.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it will. I'm not saying it won't. I'm just looking at the current trends. I mean, if we look at how a lot of services have moved to an app-based delivery method, if I have some type of microchip implant that will allow me to be able to interface in such a way that's profitable to a company, do you think that they wouldn't try? So I think you're right. I don't believe in, I think everybody should get a fair shake. I always have. It's just how I'm wired, but I think anything that we can do to try and get in front of a divisive type of thing, even if it's just to open a discourse and dialogue, I think is still moving us in the right direction.
Thanks, Len. That was brilliant. I'm just thinking, even since just the last time I saw you speak, just looking at yourself, your number of implants has increased. It looks like the technology is coming along quite rapidly, especially when you start looking at things like Raspberry Pis and bits of technology like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever worry that the implants are going to become obsolete, or have I just played too much DSX?
Do I worry that they're going to be obsolete? No. Am I worried more that something new is going to come out that I'm going to want more than the one that I already have? Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. But I have a very, very high pain tolerance. So the idea of just taking this one out and putting the next one in, it just doesn't bother me. I mean, the Walletmore credit card implant is just like any other credit card. It expires every so many years. So in order to maintain that technology, you're going to have to replace that, as it becomes necessary as well. But one of the things that I question, in my vision of the future is right now we have tattoo parlors. We have body modification parlors. Are we going to actually is the body modification parlor going to become a real body modification parlor? Is the world going to wind up being kind of like cyberpunk? I don't know. I mean, I think that if given the opportunity, there's going to be some crazy people out there that would go, you mean I can cut this arm off and I can get an arm that I could, crush steel with? Where do I sign up? And if we just look at how that plays into people's jobs, the careers that, could potentially be coming out. Between quantum computing, the integrations with the human dynamic, I think we're sitting right on the cusp of a lot of major breakthroughs over the course of the next 10 years. I really, really do.
All right, last question. Kimberly, do you have your hand up?
It sort of carries on from what you just said. Where do you see the near future? So what's next after your Raspberry Pi?
After the Raspberry Pi, I'm honestly waiting to see what's going to happen with the graphene batteries. They have now found there's been multiple new advancements in terms of being able to synthesize graphene. One small graphene battery would run a Raspberry Pi for up to 10 years. So we're back to the idea of then we can actually get fully integrated systems. Keep in mind even with the peg leg that I'm talking about putting in my leg, there's no battery in it. The battery and the power comes from an external wireless charger. The minute the wireless charger moves away from the receiver, it's gone. There's no way outside of medical grade implants to have internal power. And those are still very, very limited to what types of devices that they can actually use. Pacemakers, internal stem. There's only about 10 implants, medical grade implants, that even have internal power due to the exact issues that you were talking about. You can't really charge them because the charging process generates heat, and you don't want to generate heat inside the body. So once we get to the point where we can have a large enough battery cell to where it makes it feasible, then I think we're going to start seeing a lot of these bigger, crazier things. Right now, we're stuck, I think, due to the limitations of the technology at this phase. But I mean, I'm willing to go out and stick a Raspberry Pi in my leg just so that I can actually pop a terminal on my cell phone. And while I'm sitting here speaking at B-sides, I can actually be doing low energy Bluetooth sweeps and autopones. I mean, it just makes sense to me.
I love it. I've got a question for the audience. It's a bit of a hands up. And, if you're watching at home, put your hand up. We can't see you. Maybe we can. Who here would be interested in becoming Borg? You are Borg already.
I am Borg.
You are Borg. I'm going to be Borg tomorrow. 24 hours from Borg. Yeah.
Welcome to
I'm coming in.
Welcome to the collective. But I'll be around this tomorrow if you guys want to get philosophical, if you want to talk about my implants, whatever you want to do. Thank you guys very much for letting me come talk.
Massive round of applause. Thank you, Len.